Hey, Calvary Academy family. Hope all is doing well. This morning I was reading in Acts chapter 12, and I just wanted to share with you. It's talking about the early church at the time, and this is kind of like right after Jesus had died. So Jesus, first four books of the Gospel of the New Testament were about when Jesus was walking the earth, and then right after that, Jesus said, okay, to the people that were with him, the disciples who probably weren't much different than you and I, were now, here's the church, essentially. Here is, you are in charge of everything. So Acts is the stories that came after the account, of what happened after Jesus was gone, after Jesus ascended into heaven. So what's going on in this verse, in this chapter, I'll just read a little bit. It says in verse 1, it was about this time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. When he saw this met with approval among the Jews, he proceeded to seize Peter also. This happened during the festival of unleavened bread. After arresting him, he put him in prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 squads of soldiers each. Herod intended to bring him out for public trial after the Passover. So, and then the scriptures continue to talk about how Peter was asleep. The church was earnestly praying to God for him, and then he miraculously came out of prison and ends up at the house where everybody is praying for him. And it continues in verse 12. When this had dawned on him, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, also called Mark, where many people had gathered and were praying. Peter knocked at the outer entrance, and the servant named Rhoda came to answer the door. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed, she ran back without opening and exclaimed, "Peter is at the door." "You're out of your mind," they told her. And when she kept insisting that it was so, they said it must be his angel. But Peter kept knocking. And when they opened this door and saw him, they were astonished. Peter motioned with his hand for them to be quiet and described how the Lord had brought him out of prison. "Tell James and the other brothers and sisters about this," he said. And then he left for another place. Okay, so I've heard this story many times, and again, I can't emphasize this enough. Just reading the Bible constantly. It doesn't matter how many times you've read the Bible. I've heard many sermons about this as well. It could be talking about the persistence of prayer. It could be talking about, are you really anticipating God's going to do what you're praying for? There's a lot about this that I've heard. But I was just reading about it, and some interesting, I'm imagining at this time, so the King Herod he's going around killing people at that time, killing Christians specifically. So it's interesting to me that in this time, the church is locked in their houses. They're hiding. They're not walking around in public. And I'm like, that's very interesting, because although it's a very different situation where they're afraid they're going to die, they are in this place where they can't meet together like they normally would. And they probably can't all come and have these huge worship celebrations and giant church services and things like that. So when that's happening, I'm wondering, well, what is the church doing? And you see that even though they're unable to, their leader, Peter's sometimes named the first pope, right? He's in prison. He gets arrested and he's going to be killed. And some of the other leaders have been killed. And so what do they do in that situation? They get together, they pray, they spend time with God. I think it's just so important for us too, we're unable to meet together. We're unable to do what we're able to do normally. And just how do we respond in this situation? What is God calling us to do right now? And I think, to still come together, to still pray, to still constantly go to God first. I think that is so important for us, and it's so encouraging to see too, that it didn't say the church kind of stopped meeting or they stopped praying. They did it more. So I just encourage you, God's in control. God is sovereign. He knew this would happen before it happened. And he has a plan for all of this and for all of us as well. So, I just encourage you to keep praying, to keep seeking after God, to even keep, whatever that may look like, whether it's on the phone with your friends and to pray together, whether it's with your family, whether it's to worship together as a family, or with your friends, or many like online Zoom small groups or something like that. I just encourage you to seek after God and to keep putting him first in all of this. God bless.